Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Net Zero Nuclear Pavilion in the Green Zone here at COP28. My name is Jennifer Gordon, and I'm the director of the Atlantic Council's Nuclear Energy Policy Initiative. And I'm so delighted to be here with everyone, now that we are all here, talking about nuclear horizons or nuclear frontiers, and focusing on new technologies, new countries, and new use cases. And it's really difficult to imagine a better group of people to talk about these subjects and to address these issues than this panel. So I'm really delighted to introduce our panelists for today. Dr. John Wagner, who is the Laboratory Director of Idaho National Laboratory. Dr. Stephen Yamoah, who is Executive Director of Nuclearelectrica Ghana. Mr. Joe St. Julian, who is President for Nuclear at AtkinsRealis. Mr. Cosmin Ghita, who is Chief Executive Officer of Nuclearelectrica. And Mr. Christopher Levesque, who is President and Chief Executive Officer of Terrapower. So, John, I'd like to start with you. And because the title of this panel, again, is New Horizons, New Technologies, New Countries, and New Use Cases, so that's a lot. But over the weekend, there was a great article in Bloomberg, which I actually read on the airplane here, that talked about new technologies and the next generation of reactors that are being built at INL. So talk to us a little bit more. What's going on at the laboratory?
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer, and thank you for having me on this panel. It's great to be on this panel with this esteemed group. So a shout out to Will Wade from Bloomberg for the article. Will came and visited our site and then wrote a really nice article, as you already noted, about what's going on there. A lot is going on. So let me just do a little bit of context first. Some of you may not be familiar with U.S. Department of Energy National Laboratories, and I won't give you the whole story on those. But of those, we are the one at Idaho National Laboratory that's focused on nuclear energy research, development, and demonstration. So that's our thing. And actually, nuclear power was first demonstrated on our site back in the 50s. And back in that time period, we built out 52 different reactors, built them, operated them, demonstrated different technologies. But we went through a period of time in the United States where we stopped doing that. And so it has been 50 years since we have demonstrated a new novel reactor on our site. And I tell you that to set the context of what's happening now. It's incredibly exciting. We are working towards demonstrating 3 new reactors in just the next 3 years. Now, these are very small systems. They're not your AP1000s or your small modular reactors, but they're learning. We're doing it to learn how to do it again. And actually something I think we'll come back to is the different use cases. So the first few are micro-type reactors. 85 Marvel reactor will be 85 kilowatts. So that will help us learn how to do it again. Very exciting, also sometimes challenging. And also will provide a platform for R&D for these very small microreactor systems to demonstrate how they're going to work. And I'll come back to some of that again later. The second one is a Department of Defense reactor, a mobile nuclear power plant. The deployment opportunity or mechanism is in cargo containers. So it'll provide the Department of Defense with mobile nuclear power. The third is not so much a reactor as an experiment to get data and understand how a new system is going to work. This is a collaboration with Southern Company and Terrapower. It's called the Molten Chloride Reactor Experiment. When it goes operational or goes critical, that will be the first fast spectrum molten salt reactor in the world. And so we're learning how to do that, preparing the salts and so forth. So that's just a snapshot, because I know we have other panelists, but that is, again, just a snapshot of all the exciting things that we're doing, in addition to the fundamental research that we've continued to do for quite some time. Fundamental research in things like new nuclear fuels, like trisofuels, new nuclear materials, molten salts, recycling, et cetera, et cetera. So I'll stop there, though, for now.
John, thank you so much. And again, just want to emphasize how crucial the role of the laboratory is in demonstrating and testing these reactors. So thank you so much. Stephen, a number of us who I think are here right now, including John and me, we were recently in Accra for the U.S. Africa Nuclear Energy Summit. And I think I speak for everyone who was there when I say that we were all tremendously impressed by Ghana's readiness for a nuclear energy program. So, for those who did not have the privilege of attending the summit, could you talk a little bit about why Ghana has assessed that nuclear energy could really become a crucial part of its energy mix?
Yes, thank you, Jennifer, and thank you for inviting me to this panel. I agree with you. The US-Africa Summit in Accra was very impressive, and it made a lot of impact. And I hope it will continue going forward because it drums home the nuclear agenda in Africa. Ghana's nuclear actually has gone through stages. When we started in the early 60s with our first president, which was curtailed. And then in the late 80s and early 90s, when we started experiencing power shortages, there was a discussion of adding on. At the time, we were depending on our hydropower plant. And so there was a discussion between nuclear and thermals. Eventually, we opted to go with the thermals. And as we speak, we have over 65% dependent on thermal power plants. We have exhausted all our hydro potentials with very little unexploited hydro potential. Now, studies that we did in terms of projected demand into the future indicates a lot of demand going in from 2030 and beyond. And so where are we going to get our energy from? So we did a lot of analysis. In addition to that, as I mentioned, the thermals is over 65%, and considering the global effect, the decarbonization agenda, reducing the carbon footprint. So should we continue to depend on thermals? And in actual fact, in Ghana, when there are world prices fluctuations with respect to the crude oil and gas, it affects us a lot. So within a year, you get tariff, changing 4 or 5 times within a year because we so much depend on the thermals. And then also the issue of security. We basically have hydro and thermals, and there's a need for us to expand our energy base to have a more secure energy infrastructure so that their strengths and weaknesses will balance each other. And added on to that is also the fact that there is a real demand for power in terms of adding value to our raw materials. We have abundant raw materials, but the exploitation and added value to it has been very minimal because of high prices of electricity. So put all of this into the context, then we needed to take a decision as to how do we increase our baseload generation. I've talked about the hydro, which we don't have much potential going forward. And so looking at nuclear and coal as the potential additional baseload to support the hydro, considering the environmental issues and all of that, a decision was taken in 2008 to reactivate our nuclear agenda. And through that, we have been able to, following through the IEA milestone approach, I've gone through successfully with phase 1, and currently we are in phase 2. And I believe most of the US companies probably are aware of the engagement that we are currently having with various vendors to be able to select a strategic partner that will partner my organization to move to the project phase. So in a nutshell, these are the major considerations that are influencing Ghana's decision to proceed on a nuclear power project.
Stephen, thank you so much for those insights into Ghana and the energy mix. Joe, I'd like to go back to this theme for a moment of new technologies, because AtkinsRealis just announced a new reactor, I think last week, called the CANDO Monarch. So please tell us more.
Thank you. So the CANDO Monarch, yes, it's a new technology, but it's really the evolution of an existing technology, the indigenous nuclear technology of Canada. So CANDO came about 70 years ago. It came out of a national laboratory called Chalk River It's 35 of these units have been built around the world. The largest scale is a 930 megawatt reactor at Darlington, which is in just outside of Toronto. What we're doing is we're taking that platform and we're kind of uprating it to a full gigawatt scale with all the modern digital twins, all the technology, passive safety systems, all of that kind of stuff. So yes, it is a new technology, and we have called it the Monarch. What makes the CANDU different from all other large reactor technologies, kind of first and foremost, and there's enough nuclear work to go around. So we're not saying that you should only build CANDUs, although maybe we are a little bit, right? But what makes it different is it uses natural uranium. It is the only heavy water reactor of the 7, arguably 6 commercially available reactors today that doesn't use enriched uranium, which, as we all know in this nuclear industry, is a big issue these days. Fuel security, which is really upstream of energy security. The other thing about the CANDU that is different is it's online refueling, so you don't shut it down every year to refuel, and so you have a very high capacity factor. If you look at the 420 reactors in operation today, large reactors in operation today, CANDU has 29 still in operation, and all of them are in the top quartile, and Cosmin here has 2 that are in the top 10 in Romania. And that's simply because you actually fuel online. You keep the reactor running as you refuel. The other thing that makes it quite unique is it's the only nuclear reactor technology that can simultaneously produce electricity and medical isotopes. And when I first got into this business, probably 20 years ago, first time in the nuclear business, it was really you had to do one of 2 things. You were someone that built new nuclear assets, or you're someone that kind of tore down end-of-life nuclear assets. So you were a builder, or you were a tear-out guy. In the last, 5-10 years, there's this emerging kind of medical isotope phenomenon that's kind of growing and growing and growing. And typically these medical isotopes are made with other kind of processes other than putting a target inside of a nuclear reactor and irradiating a target so that it meets the specification of a medical isotope. But the CANDU can actually do that. It's the only one that can do it. So it is a new technology, and we're excited about it. We did announce it last week. And anyone that's interested, just come see me afterwards. So, anyways.
Joe, thank you so much. I think you've inspired everyone to build some CANDU reactors, and Cosmin, I think, actually is building 2 more large CANDU reactors and refurbishing Chernobyl Reactor 1, and also building a small modular reactor. So, Cosmin, tell us a little bit about this constellation of reactors that you're working on in Romania.
And also a tritium removal facility to support fusion reactors with their fuel. So that shows a little bit about the versatility of the technology mix. And as was Joe previously pointed out, actually Romania is number 1 in terms of capacity factor worldwide. And that lends itself to a very strong operations school, strong management system that's inspired from IMPO. North America, I still believe that that's the best practice that you can get in terms of managing a particular power plant, and very reliable technology. And during the recent Ukraine crisis, fuel security has been very important, and having the possibility of having all of our fuel cycle in Romania active gave us a lot of relief. So in that sense, we're leveraging what we did in the past, and the CANDU reactors are complicated systems with a lot of safety systems. They fuel online, they're versatile, but they're not easy to operate. And we are lending ourselves that type of expertise to support the development and deployment of exciting new technology, which we partner up with NuScale to replace a coal plant. So part of our mandate today partly is to try to support new technology, and that's what we're doing in deploying the tritium removal facility using Romanian technology for catalytic exchange, and supporting then ITER with the tritium needed for its fuel production. Supporting, finalizing our nuclear program to start to help decarbonize Romania, because we're going to be taking out 4.2 gigawatts electric of coal and of capacity off our grid by 2032. So the mandate for us is by 2032 is get 2,000 megawatts electric into the grid. So we're doing this through 2 CANDOs that we can build by that time. And once SMR that is physically replacing a coal site in the heart of Romania. And that helps us further enhance the Romanian School of Nuclear Operations, so to speak, which ties into our relationship with the universities. We've opened up the first simulator for an SMR in our university at Polytechnica, and creating a circuit in terms of regulatory and operations preparedness and regulatory affairs to help deploy this technology in the region and these technologies in the region, and to support even those particular countries that want, or customers, large utilities, that maybe don't want to deal with operations, or they want to have a little bit of support in the region, that know all the familiarities of Euratom and the Central Eastern European grid. So we want to be there to support decarbonization and energy resilience, both through the grid, which are the large reactors, and also near the customer, which are the SMRs. So we're going to keep all types of relationships in terms of power production. Thank you.
Cosmin, thank you so much. Really appreciate, again, that view of the constellation of different types of reactors in Romania, but also I appreciate you bringing in mention of the universities and customers, and again, just that full ecosystem. Chris, I'd like to go to you because, as you know, of course, you've turned Kemmerer, Wyoming, a tiny town in the southwest corner of Wyoming, into a household name, especially for anybody who cares about the future of nuclear energy. So tell us a little bit more about Terrapower's Natrium project.
Sure, Jennifer. And 2 things to note. You're hearing about multiple reactor designs, and we need them all. I'll say that because Cosmin and I were together last Saturday, where 22 countries announced that we need to triple nuclear energy by 2050. So we're going to need all these reactors you're hearing about. And I also wanted to talk maybe just about Africa and Ghana and the countries that don't have big commercial nuclear programs today. When Bill Gates founded Terrapower 15 years ago, and he's still our chairman, he did it for regions like Africa, Indonesia, because he and our other founders were futurists. They realized that we're going to have a growing need for energy. It needs to be emission-free, and nuclear fission was the best way to do that. So that's where our story started, and now we find ourselves in Wyoming. We've worked on the Natrium reactor for first 10 years of Terrapower's life, and 3 years ago, through a grant through the Department of Energy, Terrapower won a $2 billion grant to assist us with building that first reactor. And we had to choose a site at that point. And we launched a site study. And it turns out that in the Mountain West, you have many coal plants that have been running, some of them 60, 70 years, okay? Really a rich heritage. I know we're phasing them out, but you have to respect that these communities, these coal plant workers, have been powering the rich economies on the West Coast, and then you have states like West Virginia doing the same on the East Coast. These communities are amazing places to demonstrate these first reactors because you have the grid connection, you have the cooling water, and importantly, you have the team. So, in fact, just 3 weeks ago, I was at the Kemmerer coal plant talking to 50 coal plant workers, briefing them on our project because we've committed that the 150 or so workers at the coal plant can come and work in our Natrium reactor plant. And some people would say, how can you move from a coal plant to a nuclear plant? Well, we make electrons the same way in a nuclear plant and a coal plant. We make steam, we spin a turbine. So the vast majority of the skills that we need to operate the future Natrium plant will come from that coal plant. It's things like electricians, ventilation technicians, maintenance people, pipe fitters. We're going to put all those people to work. And so that's also a great example of when you have a technology change, you want to just transition. You don't want to leave people behind. And so we're excited that we're bringing clean energy to people, but we're also excited about that economic development story in Wyoming, where we plan to build multiple plants. And just coming back to Africa, we were really pleased to be at the summit and represented in Ghana a few weeks ago. And what Bill Gates has said is for these new technologies like Natrium, we need to license them and demonstrate them in rich countries, in the rich countries first. We don't want to come to Ghana or any other country and say, you have our first one, okay? We're going to demonstrate it in the U.S., and then it will be available in Ghana and all over the world in the 2030s.
Chris, thank you so much, and really appreciate your focus and mention of workforce development and the just transition. And I'd like to stay for my next question in the Mountain West for one more moment, because for the last few years, the Atlantic Council's been involved in a project called the Frontiers Project with the Idaho National Laboratory, where we've tried to create a consortium of Mountain West states that are interested in bringing advanced reactors actually to off-grid applications. But I think what's clear is that what we do in our own regions really has a global significance and global impact. So, John, my question to you is, how do we bring this regional work to global markets?
So thanks for that. Thanks for the discussion on the Frontiers Project. Atlantic Council's been a fantastic partner, of course. So let me kind of concentrate in two different areas, and maybe I'll bring workforce in as a third. But the first was in our region, we started just talking to different energy users and communities that were interested in their transition and what they might look like. And so we concentrated initially sort of locally. And Wyoming is a very significant energy producer in the United States, energy exporter across their state boundaries, and frankly a state that really understands energy. And so we refer to them as having a high energy IQ as a state. And so they were very interested in not just the large power systems that they needed, but also remote power extraction. That also kind of quickly led us into talking to states like Alaska, which has very unique power needs, particularly in the very small nuclear systems where remote communities are relying on diesel fuel that sometimes is flown in or barged in once or twice a year, weather permitting, and these communities rely on that as the lifeblood of their communities. And so also the price point, frankly, is quite different in a situation like that. And so we have been very active in helping these communities, these energy users, understand what are the options, what does it look like, answering their questions about what does it mean to have a nuclear power plant in our facility, and how real is this, and all sorts of questions like that. What about the nuclear waste? All these questions. So part of it has been stakeholder engagement with energy users for a variety of applications that typically have not thought about nuclear. And then the other part of this is, how real is this? And so at the laboratory, we play a significant role working with our private sector partners in trying to make these things real. So for example, maybe this group might not be surprised, but when we have some of these folks come and visit the laboratory and we talk about micronuclear reactors, what they might look like, we talk about the Marvel reactor or the Pele reactor, several serious officials of different, I won't say which organizations, say, okay, fine, where could I buy one? Well, you can't buy one right now, so we have to show what these things are going to cost, how they operate, what they look like, and there's a huge appetite for this. And so that's an important role that we play. And then third, I have to touch on workforce. Others have already, I should finish my other part. By demonstrating these, by showing what they look like and so forth, that's opened it up even beyond regional to states like West Virginia, states like Utah and Montana in our region of interest. And I think that's really how we go global, is by showing the way in both stakeholder engagement as well as demonstrating these systems for others to see. In terms of workforce, when you think about tripling nuclear, you think about what we're dealing with regionally, and then you think about globally, we do not have anywhere near the workforce that we need. I operate a laboratory that employs over 6,000 people. We've been growing quite fast. And when anybody asks me what's the thing I'm concerned about the most, it's not the safety of our facilities or the safety of our materials, it's our workforce. Where are we going to get enough people with the right skills to deliver on what the nation and what the planet needs from nuclear and even other work that we do? So thanks for the question.
Thank you so much, John. And I think it's clear as we go to these different states, whether it's Wyoming or Alaska or Utah, each one has so many different use cases for nuclear reactors, and there's really, I think, a pull from the market rather than a technology push, because there's so much in demand. So, Stephen, my question to you is, as we kind of think through different applications, different use cases for reactors, what do you see as the demand pull from Ghana to build and to deploy nuclear reactors in Ghana?
Yes, as I said from the earlier submission, so really there's a real need for power, electricity going forward. Even looking at base case scenarios in terms of demand, we're looking at 300 to 400 megawatts yearly additions. But then when you consider other developmental projects and so on, so it goes up. So in our case, advanced reactors obviously has a role to play. We believe that, personally, I believe that SMRs is the future of nuclear and will be significant contribution to Ghana's nuclear agenda. But we're looking at more of a grid scale SMR. Because in our case, it's not just adding on a technology to increase your electricity, but we're also looking at the industrial component of it. How does the nuclear, project, the nuclear industries galvanize and drive other industrial activities in the country? So that we're looking at it as a package of a project, not just that we need some extra power and therefore we're going for nuclear to add on to that. So putting all of that, the SMRs is one of our key targets. The large reactors are also there, I must say, but of course there are key challenges with respect to our grid. If you're going for large, looking at our grid size and all of that, that may call for additional investment to the grid transmission system. So in a nutshell, I would say yes, the advanced reactors is a target going forward, and in our case, Ghana's case, and I believe probably with all the other African and developing countries, we're not pursuing nuclear agenda just as we need this amount of power, let's get it from nuclear, but as an industry that will drive other economic activities, to improve the socio-economic well-being of our people. So that is our goal.
Stephen, thank you so much, and absolutely agreed on this approach of looking at it holistically as an industry rather than just providing power in certain instances. Joe, I'd like to go back to you because, as we mentioned, you've announced a new type of reactor. You've also won the bid for refurbishment at Cernavoda 1. Tell us about your plans in the Central and Eastern European region, but also perhaps more globally, more broadly.
Yeah, so right now there are really two commercially, you could argue three, but two commercially available CANDU reactors. They're the ones that we built in the first wave. They're the ones that we call it the CANDU 6. These are the ones that Cosmin has in Romania. And the Monarch is the full gigawatt scale. So what are we going to sell? And it all depends on grid capacities and densities and what's really needed. But we're going to sell both CANDU 6s and the Monarchs. The way that we're doing it now is we're focused on Canada, kind of Canada first. Obviously, we're helping Cosmin build units 3 and 4. So Romania and Canada for the Monarch, Romania for the CANDU 6. Once we actually get mandated to build the first Monarch in Canada, we will take that around the world, and we will sell CANDU 6s and CANDU Monarchs around the world. So you'd say, well, where are you going to do it? We know we're not going to sell a CANDU in the United States, right? And we know we're not going to sell a CANDU in France. It's unlikely that we're going to sell a CANDU in Korea because of KEPCO, although KH&P owns 4 CANDUs. They're going to the AC 1400s. So where we're going to sell is where CANDUs already exist. There are 12 that are overseas. Romania, Eastern Europe is, and we've talked to Cosmin at length about this, is a very good target. But we're going to sell to places that don't have light water reactors today because they don't have the light water infrastructures that have to flip. So we're going to countries that have CANDU heavy water reactors first. Argentina, Eastern Europe, Korea. We actually have 2 CANDUs in China, but we won't be selling in China. China's got its own technology now. And we're looking to countries that don't have nuclear today, but want nuclear. Right? We've talked about Malaysia and Indonesia, Australia, and that's where we're gonna start. So it's a simple strategy, right? Sell where there are already CANDUs and already light or heavy water reactor infrastructures, and sell to economies and countries that don't currently have nuclear that need nuclear. And there's probably about 15 countries that we're focused in right now overseas. But the Monarch starts in Canada first. We've got to get it licensed and actually a license to construct in Canada, which we'll leverage to sell across the world. But right now, for the CANDU 6, our number one most important customer is Cosmin. So.
Wonderful, Joe. Thank you so much. I'll let Cosmin say thank you too. Right.
Thank you, Joe.
So I think, picking up on this idea of the regional to global narrative, but also I think how we look beyond our own borders. Cosmin, you and I have talked a lot about the notion of Romania becoming a regional clean energy hub and really supplying clean power from nuclear throughout the region. So tell us a little bit more about your thinking on that topic.
It depends on what you define as a hub. On one end is, yes, producing more electrons to be able to export. And actually, we're currently supporting Moldova quite heavily throughout its winters from our Chernobyl facilities. And we're also talking with countries in the region, such as Greece, that maybe don't have a nuclear program, but want to have access to baseload clean electricity to possibly involve them in offtake constructs to take electricity. We're also balancing with 20 other markets. So now in the EU, we're interconnected in that way. So the more electron and the more producing capacities we put in the grid, the more we implicitly support all of this integrated market. That is one point. The second point has to do with expertise, supply chains, and again, training of people. So when you create a nuclear program, you invest not just in the unit itself, you invest in developing capabilities such as the ones that we talked about at Polytechnica and the university, in creating regulations that are that you can extrapolate, and in putting back your supply chain on track. Romania has had a strong supply chain in the nuclear industry, but also in the oil and gas industry, that we're seeing that those supply chains can help contribute to a lot of the great projects that we're talking about right now, but also for others. Think about offshore drilling platforms that you can convert for offshore wind installation facilities. So these have the same type of core competencies, and all of that project management that comes in from that industry is heavily needed in building nuclear. So basically, if we were to revive what we have over there, it's through the means of these investments to try to help others deploy faster and cheaper. Because at the end of the day, I would say maybe even labor costs can be a competitive advantage as we're normalized in our own geography in that sense. And probably that is more of the context where you get global technologies and technologies that are globally available and universal, and figure out a way in which you apply them to a regional context for it to be worthwhile and make sense from an infrastructure standpoint, workforce culture development standpoint, and also cost and supply chain standpoints.
Cosmin, thank you so much. And Chris, as we've mentioned before, it seems as though Terrapower is very, very focused on Kemmerer, Wyoming. However, we've also heard just now from you, and we know that Terrapower also has a global strategy and is keeping this broader international view. And I should have mentioned before, of course, you were also represented at the U.S.-Africa Nuclear Energy Summit. So tell us a little bit about this regional to global strategy that your company is taking.
Sure. I think it needs to be noted that many nuclear projects in the free world have struggled in the last few decades. So getting that first project right is the most challenging part, and we're so focused on that. Now that Vogtle 3 and 4 are done in Georgia, you could ask, well, what's the next American nuclear power plant? We believe that's Natrium, okay, in Kemmerer, Wyoming. We have 1,000 engineers working on that design right now, and we'll break ground when things thaw this spring in Wyoming. So we're very focused on proving that first one. But you might have heard last Sunday we announced an MOU with Emirates Nuclear Energy, ENEC, who, beyond building the 4 Baraka plants, has really established themselves as a global leader in nuclear energy. So at the announcement, Bill Gates joined us. He talked about building hundreds of Natrium reactors around the world because we're going to need that much energy. And to do that, we're going to need to get the first one proven, licensed by the NRC, demonstrated, but we're then going to quickly scale up in the 2030s. So for that, we need global partners like ENEC.
Chris, thank you so much. And I am so sorry to say that we are unfortunately out of time. But Chris, I love this note that you've ended us on, which is building in the scale of hundreds rather than in the ones and twos that we are seeing at the moment. But I think that we can all raise ambitions, and this is a great call to action. So everyone, please join me in thanking our panelists.